Join me as we honor the profound journey of special needs mothering and explore the deep spiritual gifts these beautiful babies bring to our lives with Mother Christine Bovenmyer. Welcome back, everyone, to the Yin-care podcast. I'm your host, Margaret Jacobson, the Mother Rising, and I'm so happy that you're here with me today. I recently had an incredible opportunity to interview Christine Bovenmyer, and it is a very tender, very sacred, and deeply powerful interview that I know is going to touch your heart deeply. Christine is first and foremost a child of the divine creator. She is a mother, a lover of the earth, a nurse, a certified healing touch practitioner, and a trained death doula. Her life changed drastically 15 years ago when the birth of her first child, Maxwell Kristian Bovenmyer, did not go as planned. As you'll discover in this interview, Max sustained a severe brain injury. Physically, Max would never walk, crawl, talk, and was extremely challenged in eating. Yet he was profoundly beloved by many, living a deeply heart-centered life for 7.5 years before transitioning back to the other side. Max became Christine's greatest spiritual guide and the ultimate catalyst for her pursuit of nursing licensure, healing touch certification, and death doula training. In this pre-recorded conversation, Christine opens her heart to share how Max came here as a literal transmitter of unconditional love, initiating a generational healing journey that continues to guide Christine's mission to support others through their own challenges. Grab a cup of tea, drop directly into your heart, and enjoy this incredibly moving, sacred conversation I recently shared with Christine. Welcome, Christine, to the Yin-care podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today and just truly honored to share your story of your mothering journey with your son, Max, with our audience. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really wonderful. Christine has such a touching and tender story about Max's short life, but, very interesting mothering journey for sure. And what I would really love is if you would start by sharing Max's full name, because we really want to honor what he brought here, what he came for, who he was. And through that, it's expressed in his name. So let's honor his name. And then maybe you can start by sharing what your journey was for your, before you were pregnant. What was your life like? What was Christine's life before Max? Just to give us a flavor of that, and what led into your pregnancy, all of your hopes and dreams, where you were at with that, and then what your pregnancy was like. Okay? Yin-care's Blossom Biome is a vaginal-focused probiotic to support your inner ecology, your vaginal biome, not just your gut. You can use it orally or vaginally as part of your health creation journey. I'm not here to give you a bunch of warnings. I trust your womb wisdom to self-govern and choose what's right for you. Find it in our womb wisdom store at yincare.com/shop.
Yeah, sure. So my first child was Maxwell Kristian Bovenmyer, Christian with a K. Yeah, and he came into our lives a few short months after my husband and I were married. I think we were 3 months into our marriage when I got pregnant, and it was a huge shock for me. I was 27, but I did not feel ready. So.
And where were you guys living?
We were living in Ames, Iowa.
Okay.
In central Iowa. I had a pretty sheltered upbringing where I didn't do a lot of exploring or rebelling. in high school. And so those first years when I was meeting my husband and when we were married, that I was like in that phase of life where my husband was in a band. And so we did a lot of going out and listening to music or, supporting him playing music. And there was a lot of drinking involved in that. And it was not something I did in high school. And so this was kind of like that period of my life where I was doing all the things and trying everything out. And so when I got pregnant, it was a huge shock. I was not at all prepared for this. And I remember thinking I didn't want this to like change my life drastically. Like I wanted to be able to enjoy my life and have fun and things like that along with a child. And so, yeah, a lot of my visions for being a parent were very different from what I was seeing around me. And maybe not in the, like looking back on it, I'm like, I'm not sure that would have been a healthy way to raise a kid anyway, but whatever.
Like, what do you mean? Like, to elaborate a little bit on what were you seeing and what were you noticing were the juxtapositions of what you did and didn't want?
At the time, I was seeing a lot of structured, like this is bedtime and we don't go out past this time and we don't do these kind of things because our life revolves around our children.
Got it.
Yeah, I think part of me just wasn't really ready to give up that independence. And
right.
So that probably was just my, immaturity.
For sure.
Not ready to be a parent yet. So that whole pregnancy was just me kind of coming to terms with, and I wanted to be in this consciously. Like I wanted to be engaged. I wanted this baby to feel loved. And so like I felt like I needed to get myself together even like early on so that I could really just cultivate a love for it and make sure this baby like felt loved and appreciated and everything we want as humans and what we need to thrive. Yeah. And so I ended up finding, my husband and I kind of talked before we got pregnant that we wanted to have a home birth. And I was not ever, I hadn't been in the medical world for anything really. I went to the doctor for regular stuff growing up, but I probably hadn't been to the doctor in several years at that point. I mean, I was a pretty healthy person, so I didn't have a need for that. And just really feel like birth is not something that needs to be medicalized. Like it's not a disease. It's not anything normal. So just really trying to honor that natural. And
were you raised like with more natural inclinations around medical or just natural lifestyle or anything? Or it's just something that you intuitively, that's just part of who you are really, that you were coming into?
Yeah, I think it was more just something I was coming into. I wouldn't say that's how I was raised. Definitely, my parents took me to the doctor when I was sick, had antibiotics.
What about your ex-husband? Just to get a flavor of what the whole picture was like.
Yeah, my ex-husband probably was raised a little more like that. I think 6 of the 7 kids in his family were born in the home. So that was, and he was the middle child. So he definitely witnessed some home births when he was young. So yeah, that kind of flavored things, but yeah, it was definitely something that I was kind of coming into too. And the midwife that we found was absolutely wonderful. And the book recommendations that she had for during the pregnancy period were just epic for preparing me for what was going to happen.
No way. That's awesome.
I remember reading the book. I highly recommend to anyone who's pregnant. It's called Baby Catchers. Baby Catcher. Just all kinds of birth stories of all different kinds of outcomes to just kind of help you see the full flavor of what is possible with birth, and it helped me really, just prepare to hold space for whatever was going to be coming. And also just see a lot of, I mean, most of them are home birth stories. Some of them were hospital birth. But yeah, just to kind of, since I was not a person who was raised seeing home births or with that as the normal at all, it was really good for me to just read those stories and get that experience of this normal, natural process that the body goes through and how we all come into life. So that was really amazing. She also, my midwife also really opened me up to herbals and a lot of different kind of natural treatments and modalities. And yeah, just gave me a lot of empowerment as far as what testing we were doing. She was a nurse midwife, so she could have prescribed ordered an ultrasound and all the things. But she was really good about just discussing like, hey, you can do this ultrasound. It's going to show you these things. And you need to decide, is it going to change anything? Like this ultrasound might tell you that your child has Down syndrome, but is it going to change the outcome of your choices? And so that was really cool to me to see like, no, I'm not going to do anything differently. And actually, I might just have more anxiety throughout the rest of my pregnancy if I have that awareness beforehand. And just also speaking into like, if we really were meant to know if our child was a boy or a girl, there would be a window into the womb and we would be able to see. God would have given that that capacity for us to know. And so that was really cool and empowering to me to even kind of tune into my own intuition. Like, did I feel like it was a girl or a boy or? So,
and let me just touch on this really quick, just to kind of help color it maybe a little bit more. I mean, you and I know each other because we've met in Z's womb container or in Earthstar Academy. I think you were in the womb container, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, we have this connection of being in a spiritual community and speaking, knowing that we both share a belief in God. And so I'm just wondering but this was all recent, well after all of this happened for you. What was your faith or your belief at that point in time? Or how had you been raised? That would be important for everyone, I think, probably to know.
Yeah, I was raised very like evangelical Christian, born again Christian kind of flavor. And so my idea of God was very much masculine, loving, but that judgment piece was pretty important, I guess. And at that time in my life, I've been through I kind of just passed through some pretty significant religious trauma with some individuals in a church that I'd been involved in. So then that's what led to this like rebellious period for me, where I just wanted to get away from Christians. I wanted to get away from this idea of God that I had with me, that I had been raised with. So yeah, that was definitely coloring this whole period of my life. But I think I always had a sense that there was something greater than me out there. It didn't feel like it resonated with the God that I was seeing being portrayed in a lot of the churches I'd been involved in. But I just wanted to have a community where people loved and cared for each other in a non-judgmental way.
Exactly. 100%.
And yeah, it's kind of hard to find.
It's very hard to find in multiple communities. That's a whole nother conversation, right?
I mean, we are human. So
right.
I mean, I think we all have those judgments. And yeah, it's hard to kind of check that and be aware of it. So like, it's valid it's not common because it's hard when we're human, but
definitely. Yeah.
Hopefully it's something we're striving for and working towards.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that are waking up to that whole well, God, what do you even call it? Like the distance, almost like the distance that we are from really knowing and being in alignment with God and the teachings of God in multiple communities. It's not just like an evangelical Christian community. It's rampant in many Christian, Jewish, like all community, even the New Age community. Like there's all in it. I don't think it's actually, personally, I don't feel like it's an innate thing, but it's something that we're just culturally entrained to be judgmental. And it's like we have to like train ourselves to get out of that. And I do think that people are waking up in a lot of those communities and sharing, like exposing it for what it is, which is good. But I think that's important for people to know, just that, because things get pretty hard pretty quickly for you. And so knowing that you've got some level of faith or knowledge or understanding, like deep inner knowing, intuition, and connection with a divine presence, I think probably is a good backdrop for everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then you get pregnant pretty quickly, and your husband's open to this, to having a home birth. You find a midwife. You're well on your way to getting educated about and getting comfortable with. I feel like you had this incredible blog that you end up writing later on in your journey. And I feel like in the little side bio that you expressed that you had maybe been meditating throughout your pregnancy. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
That was actually when I pursued or started trying to meditate. It was very new to me. And at that time, that was 2011.
Mhm.
So there wasn't Insight Timer and like all the YouTube. I feel like there's meditations all over the web right now. If you want a guided meditation, you can find anything, thousands of different places. But at the time, or I didn't know where to find it. I didn't know how to search right. But so it was not something that was readily available to me. I think there were a few written out meditations that were in some of the book recommendations that my midwife had recommended. I was doing birth affirmations, kind of talking through those periodically. Yeah. So just kind of like unlocking this kind of a little more mystical side of spirituality, which had totally been foreign to me and in my religious upbringing. So it was very new to me. It was very, very explorative there. But yeah, I understood the importance of keeping myself stress-free, or as not possible, but helping me keep my stress level down for the health of me and my baby. And so that was my big priority there. Just preparing myself physically, mentally, and spiritually for this birth.
And were you also consciously connecting with Max, like in womb, in utero? Or was it more just getting to connect with yourself, like for the first time?
Yeah, I think it was a little both. I definitely did. I don't feel like I heard from him, but I definitely like communicated to him. And, like those insecurities after I first got pregnant, I just really wanted to reassure him that I was going to love him, like regardless of when he came along. And so I did a lot of those kind of like talking to him, and especially towards the end, just saying, whenever you're ready, I'm so excited to meet you, these kind of things.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And the whole time, I felt like it was a girl. I felt like it was going to be a girl.
Oh my
the whole time.
gosh.
And I don't know if that part of me just really wanted a girl. And so that's why I was feeling like it was a girl. But I also feel like Maxwell had a pretty feminine spirit to him. Not that obviously he's fully male and was born into a male body, but just had some softness to him, I guess, that we generally think of a little more feminine. So maybe that's what I was sensing too.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So, okay. So then you move into like, it's time to basically, is there anything else in the pregnancy? Like things were going well? Any hiccups?
Yeah.
Anything?
I mean, the pregnancy was completely normal. I had no reason at any point to believe that anything was out of the ordinary. Like, granted, we didn't do all the ultrasounds and tests and things like that, but there wasn't anything that suggested that they would be necessary, that they would have
and
any.
you're 27, you're young, like, yeah,
Healthy.
exactly.
Yep.
Totally.
So yeah, I went into labor and it was pretty normal labor. I had my mother-in-law there kind of supporting me. Death or more birth doulas were kind of a thing, but they weren't as available as they are now. So I knew she had done home births herself and she had supported other women through birth. So maybe she wasn't a certified doula, but she had plenty of experience. So yeah, she was supporting me. And the one thing that was a little risky with my birth was that I lived about a half hour away from my midwife. So it's kind of the edge of her field of where she would work. And the other thing was our hospital, our local hospital that was right in town, was very close. However, they did not have a physician, an OBGYN on call in the hospital.
Okay.
They would have 30 minutes to present to the hospital because they weren't in-house, the physician that was on call. Yeah. Labor went pretty normal. My midwife came. This is very gray area for me because obviously there's some anxiety and stuff going on, but I can't remember if when my midwife got there, like she had the Doppler and she was checking the heart tones of me, like she was checking my pulse and baby. And I'm not sure if it was from the time that she got there, like the first heartbeat check, or if it was like a little while later, but Max's heartbeats were slow. And at the time I was a pretty avid runner, so I had a pretty slow pace myself. So when I heard the nurse saying that the baby's pulse was slower than mine, because they were having a little hard time telling, is this mom's or is this baby's?
Right.
That's mom's. Baby's is slower. I remember those words. So that's when I knew like something serious was going on. And we tried like all the different positions, shifting around to get baby into a better position, me into a better position.
And how were your contractions coming pretty quickly at this point or no?
Yeah, they were pretty quickly. I was starting to try to push, but I didn't feel like the pushing was very effective.
Right.
And my midwife had kind of coached me that, hey, baby's struggling a little bit. Maybe we should try pushing a little bit more too. But yeah, I just didn't feel like it was effective. So anyway, through all that, we decided that it was time to move. And when I got to the hospital, they took me right up to the delivery unit. And I don't have much memory from the time I got to the ER to when Maxwell was born. But the things I do remember, and the things I've kind of ascertained from discussions with my midwife, were that the hospital staff weren't treating it as urgent as we already knew that it was.
Got it.
So they were just treating this as, oh, this is a home birth. They shouldn't have been at home, like these kind of things. And
wow.
And at that point, it was already like, this is urgent.
And so was there an OB there at that time, or did they arrive to meet you? Or
he did arrive. Yeah, the times are pretty great to me.
No
so
worries.
It felt pretty instantaneous to me. It felt like he got there pretty quickly. But after talking to my midwife, it just seemed like, for her, it felt like forever.
Got it.
So yeah, I just remember them trying to get an IV in my arm. And I was like, that is not necessary. We're beyond this. Like, I don't need an IV. I just need to
Right.
get my baby out. Baby
And
safe.
were they talking of cesarean then at this point or no?
They were
Right.
shaving my lower
Mhm.
belly. And that's the other thing that I was like, no, I'm pushing this baby out. Like, we're
Mm.
not going to do a cesarean. We're going to,
So you were committed regardless as to like they were toying with it, but they weren't pushing that on you or what
yeah. I
was
mean, I think they were preparing for it,
got
but yeah, I was already pushing.
got it.
The doctor wasn't there. So maybe if
Mhm.
the doctor
Right.
had been there, they would
I
have gone
see.
ahead with a cesarean, and I probably would have consented just because I was worried about my baby.
100%. I get it. Yeah.
Um and so when the doctor got there, like, he was so regulated, and I am so grateful for his
Oh,
presence.
good. That's
Um
amazing.
he came in and he said, "We're going to have a baby." And he got the vacuum and he did the vacuum thing, and I didn't feel like I was doing any of the pushing, but he told me that I did. He said, "No, my vacuum popped off. You did that all by yourself."
Wow.
I was like, "Okay, whatever." It didn't feel like that to me. But anyway, yeah, he came in with a very regulated presence and just kind of calmed the whole situation, at least one level. Um,
And what was your husband at the time doing? Was he freaking out? Was he like,
Honestly, I don't
don't
remember.
remember? Okay. Just curious. Yeah.
Yeah, I know he was there and I know we were in it together, but I don't have any sense of like actually what he was doing. I just remember, yeah, when they got Max out, they plopped him on my chest just for a split second, and he was Greg.
Wow.
And I was so, yeah, just shocked. So
Mhm.
for a split second, he was there. The next second, he was on the table being resuscitated. And, at this point, I didn't even know if it was a boy or a girl. We didn't have a name like definitely picked
Mhm.
out.
Mhm.
Um, and so there was just this, I don't know, we were probably all just holding our breath.
Right. And was he in the same room while they were resuscitating him or did they move him?
He was in the same room. Yep.
Mhm.
I think they got him stable. And
Mhm.
I don't know if they had intubated him before they took him out. They did he was breathing on his own, but it wasn't like a steady breathing. So they did intubate him shortly after he was resuscitated. But yeah, the doctor had done an episiotomy, I think, just to get him out faster. And so he was stitching me up. And I just remember I was in such shock that I didn't really feel anything until I
Mhm.
felt everything.
Oh,
And then I was like, that lidocaine isn't working. Like,
right.
you feel everything.
Oh God, that's
Are
so
you done?
brutal. That is brutal.
And yeah, so I think about that time they had taken Max out to kind of maybe intubate him, maybe get him stable somehow. And they were talking about transporting him to Des Moines to the
Mhm.
bigger hospital
Mhm.
where they had a NICU and a specialist and stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, then my
Mhm.
husband left in the ambulance with him, and it
Oh
it
my
was
God.
just the whole way through. It was just shocking. Like, I remember them taking Max into my room to like say goodbye before they left, and I had expected this like the little isolette with the
Mhm.
open top, and I was just gonna grab his little finger and say goodbye. But he was in this like literal box, like it was
Ah,
all enclosed, and you know
oh,
I couldn't even see him
my
hardly
goodness.
through all the like stuff and tubes and everything. And yeah, so it was just very shocking for me. And yeah, I guess the thing that I didn't mention before that is pretty valid and pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know.
Relevant, important.
Yes. The thing I didn't mention that is pretty relevant is the dreams that I was having during my pregnancy and the fears. I was never afraid of birth, of labor pains, of birth. I really was only afraid of having a child with special needs.
Actually, I remember I did read that in your blog that there was one, you were in, were you doing a prenatal yoga class or something too? And tell us, the woman had said, God will not give you more than you can handle. And you thought, I'll let you fill in.
In my yoga class, this was an amazing yoga class where there was a period before every class that we were encouraged to discuss any fears and concerns that were coming up. And I remember something coming up at one of the classes and my yoga teacher telling me that God or nature will never give you anything that you can't handle, but God or nature will give you the capacity to handle it together. And so that's just how I dealt with it. I was like, I can't handle having a child with special needs. So that's not what I'm going to be given because I can't handle that. And obviously.
And your dreams were reflecting this as well?
My dreams were kind of, along those lines too. I just remember having one specific dream of having twins where I was literally breastfeeding one, then breastfeeding the other, and constant all the time. And it didn't even connect until I was in it, but I was breastfeeding. I was pumping round the clock, not round the clock, but I was breastfeeding and then I was feeding via G-tube. And so the time it took me to breastfeed and the time it took me to do the tube feeding, then it was almost time to pump again. And then, so it did
it was like having twin in a sense.
It did have that same kind of idea of this is all I'm doing is just feeding a baby or babies. In my case, it was only one, but yeah. I think there was another dream too that was really, oh yes. I remember having a dream where I was walking through a shopping mall. I'm not really a shopping mall person, so that's kind of weird, but I was walking through the shopping mall and I was carrying this 7-year-old child and just this huge child and carrying them and struggling under the weight of this. And I didn't connect any of this when I was pregnant. It was all after the fact, oh yeah. And there were a lot of moments in Max's life that it did feel like a struggle to be carrying this child. Not obviously I wasn't physically carrying him anymore at 7, but just supporting him was a struggle. And, looking back on it, I really wish I didn't feel like that. I wish I could have lived in the joys a little bit more and found joy in the small things and the little things. But yeah, at the time, there were several moments of that overwhelm and that struggle.
Gosh, yeah, 100%.
So yeah, I feel like there were these little things that were preparing me and helping me to get ready for what was to come. And I don't know if I had blinders on or what, but
sometimes we're not meant to know. We're just not meant to know all the details, right?
It was probably just a little teaser that I needed. And
100%.
That God was talking to me or Max was talking to me or preparing.
Preparing you. Exactly.
Even those little small ways. So can't remember where we were.
So he was off to the hospital with his dad and you were left in the initial hospital. And so then what happened? How did you stay there? Did you get transported yourself? Like what happened next there?
Yeah, I think they did discharge me earlier than probably a typical birth, but it was torture for me to like, it's just heart-wrenching to be there without my husband, without my
Yeah, of course.
baby.
Was your
And
mother-in-law with you or anyone?
I mean, there was always someone with me.
Right.
I think my mother-in-law might have gone home because she had stayed up all night. And then when my mom got there from out of town, then they kind of switched places.
Sure.
So yeah, I was never alone, but it was still very heart-wrenching just to be there without my baby and to be getting in the car and having people carry all these things for me when I just felt like I should have been carrying my baby. Yes, you carry all these other things so that I can carry my baby, but I don't have.
Yeah.
And so it just felt very unnatural for me,
Absolutely.
that whole process. And we lived about the next month in the Ronald McDonald House right across the street from the Children's Hospital in Des Moines. And yeah,
We're
it was
basically in the
it was a
NICU.
very
20.
it was a very slow healing process for me.
Were you guys doing shifts watching him, or were you both going together? Or
We did both. I think in the beginning we were both very exhausted from the whole process, and so we were sleeping at night and going to spend the days with him. But then he was having really rough nights, and then the days would be great. We did kangaroo care all the time, pretty much all the time.
And tell people what kangaroo care is in case they.
Yeah, kangaroo care is amazing. There's a lot of research done on it and on preemies, NICU babies, but it's just getting the skin to skin with mom and baby. So like mom usually has a shirt on, like a button down shirt, open up the shirt, baby on the chest, naked, just a diaper, and then kind of close that shirt up so mom has more privacy. But yeah, it helps regulate heartbeat. It helps reduce the work of breathing and helps babies regulate their temperature. So
Did you suggest that, or did the staff suggest it, or?
we kind of pushed for it. It was the 5th day he was there, which was our wedding anniversary, actually.
Wow.
So Max was born just 5 days before our first wedding anniversary. And because we had been introduced to kangaroo care and baby wearing and stuff like that through my midwife. And my midwife came to check on me. She came to the Children's Hospital to check on me. And she had really helped us, kind of advocated for us to get that, that skin to skin, that holding. And it's probably something I wouldn't have felt comfortable asking for myself at the time. But because we just felt like he was so fragile that like, oh, we can't hold him because he's fragile, which doesn't make any sense. Like absolutely,
They put them in like in the kind of incubator.
Yeah.
Right. So you feel like they're fragile because of that.
Like you can't touch them, but absolutely the best thing, there's no better thing than for a parent to be holding that baby, especially skin to skin.
Right.
And so with her advocation, we kind of were able to do that day. So that was really special gift. And from that point on, it was like every day, like we're doing this skin to skin, and we did almost every day, which was huge because we saw his oxygen every time he was skin to skin. They turned his oxygen down almost to room air. The last couple of weeks, it was like we turn him down to room air when he's skin to skin. When we put him back down, then we turn him back up to 2 or whatever he was at. And yeah, his temperature was so much better regulated, and just everything. Like you could just tell his body was so much more relaxed when he was with one of us.
That's amazing. Was he able to nurse at all on his own, or was it the whole time he had to have a feeding tube?
Yeah. He was never able to nurse. We did do a swallow study at one point to test if he could swallow safe enough to get it into his stomach as opposed to his lungs. And he did okay with purees, but the milk, just because it's a little more thin, we never felt like it was safe enough for him to have that by mouth.
So how does that work? Give everybody an idea as to what you did as a mom to like make that happen, because that's pretty unusual in a NICU unit to do that.
Just the pumping or
pumping, and then how did they feed him? What did it give us an idea as to what that looked like and what that was like? And for everybody who doesn't know what NICU is neonatal intensive care unit.
Yeah. So first he had a tube through his nose that goes all the way down his throat and into his stomach. Okay. So it just kind of bypasses that whole mechanism for swallowing and pushes it directly into the stomach.
Okay.
And they do the one through the nose for a lot of NICU babies because it's a temporary thing. And sometimes babies will nurse through their mouth and then they'll have the tube through their nose so that they can get extra nutrition. With preemies, I think it wears them out a lot to do the work of sucking and swallowing, and their bodies are just not as mature. And so they need to get the calories to help them like gain the strength to swallow more. And so they kind of have the feeding tube and they slowly wean off the feeding tube and primarily to breast or bottle. With Max, since we couldn't really verify, and because he had a significant brain injury during that birth process. And so he really, I guess.
And was that due to lack of oxygen then, the brain injury specifically?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yeah. They call it hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. So hypoxic is like lack of oxygen. Ischemic is like the blood's not flowing to the brain because of that lack of oxygen. And then the encephalopathy is like a swelling of the brain. Is because the brain's not getting the nutrients, the oxygen that it needs. It kind of inflames, as with any illness, kind of inflames when it pushes against the sides of the skull. Then that outer part that's pushing against the skull gets damaged from that pressure. Sorry, that's all my...
That's good for everybody to know. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, because he had that brain injury, he wasn't developing the way we would typically see a baby develop. He didn't have that kind of suck, swallow reflex that babies have. And so I think breastfeeding would have been hard anyway. Breastfeeding would have been a big ask, even if we had determined that he had a safe swallow, just because there's a lot of mechanism that they have to draw the milk out of the breasts, as opposed to like a bottle will slowly drip into their mouth if they have a higher flow nipple or something.
Right.
But because they didn't expect him to be able to feed orally, we opted to put in a permanent G-tube, gastrostomy tube, which is just a little tube that goes in through the stomach. It has a little button that you kind of pop it open, you stick the tube in, kind of lock it in place, and then it's attached to a syringe where we would pour the milk in through the syringe. It would kind of gravity flow into the stomach. And
where's that coming out of on his body?
It will just go right into the stomach, directly into the stomach.
But on the outside, where was it located? Just to give, was it in his chest? Was it down low? Was it,
Yeah, lower left side of his belly.
Okay.
Yeah. Or was it? I'm right. Now I can't remember which side it was on. His kind of located just to one side of the belly button. We always talked about it as
Okay.
second belly button.
Okay.
With the younger kids, when the other two came along, we talked about it as his second belly button. But yeah, so that's how we fed him. For the first 3 weeks, we did all the NG tube, like the same thing. We attached a syringe, poured the milk through, and let it flow gravity. And for the last week, after he got his permanent gastrostomy tube, then it was, directly into his stomach. And just that same gravity flow process.
Okay.
We did have a pump too that we used through the night. So to kind of pump more slowly, feed him, like he would just get fed kind of continuously all night long.
And was that breast milk or was that other nutrient?
It was still breast.
It was not. So was it exclusively breast milk or were they giving him other just nutrition?
They, in the beginning, they asked us to fortify his breast milk. So in order to give him a few extra calories, we'd mix a little bit of formula. Instead of with water, we'd mix it with the breast milk so that that breast milk would have a little higher density calories just to kind of support his healing process with a little extra calories. But yeah, other than that, he was exclusively breastfed for at least 6 months. I can't remember when we started introducing some solids, but
one quick question about that, just to highlight, you mentioned that you mixed it with your breast milk. Was that an idea that the hospital staff offered up, or did you come up with that idea and they agreed to it?
Yeah, that was hospital.
That's great.
Recommended.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Even back in 2010, 2011, they were doing that.
Very good.
I felt like we had pretty breastfeeding friendly facilities. So they had lactation consultants that came in and talked to me about how to increase production. Because when you're pumping, it's just not the same. You don't get the same like biofeedback. And so it's just harder to keep that supply up. So she gave me a lot of good tips. I think I was very strongly committed to breast milk. And so if I had not been, I might have had different interactions with staff along the way. But because it was something I was strongly committed to, I really wanted to do, not only because I really wanted to do that for my child, but I think especially since he had challenges, I knew that was going to be the best possible thing I could do for him. And so I was pretty strongly committed to it. Yeah.
That's really amazing. So how long did he end up staying at the hospital for before you get to bring him home?
He was there for 4 weeks.
Okay.
And like I said, we were very eager to get him home at that point. And so we agreed to the surgery without the gastrostomy tube surgery, without having a swallow study to prove that it was necessary, because we really just wanted to be home. We wanted to have our child home.
Yeah. And there were stresses, having read some of your blog, there were some financial stresses too. You had, prior to having the baby, your job disappeared, right? And then your husband was doing, I want to say, some kind of outdoor landscaping or some type of work like this that was seasonal. So there was stresses on that. Plus he ended up supporting, like being there with you physically. So that decreased his, what would have been maybe more hours.
Yeah. And Max just really struggled with sleep. And so that was the biggest challenge in the first few months we had him home. Yeah, I always intended to be a stay-at-home mom for at least a few months after he was born. And so when I quit I was working in a coffee shop at the time, but when I quit my coffee shop job, I never really expected to go back. Also just felt like I I wanted a change. Like I wouldn't have gone back there even if I had gone to work, just because I felt like it was time to move on. But yeah, because one of us had to stay up with Max almost for most of the night.
Right.
We tried to alternate. So like he was up 6 hours, I was up 6 hours. You know, he'd stay up late, I'd get up early, kind of thing, so that it wasn't one person having to stay up all night. But it was still just, it didn't put us in the place to be really functional at a job like the next day. And yeah, my husband was working, doing groundskeeping for a like home rental company. And so, yeah, in the winter, that kind of was not an option anymore. And yeah.
I just want to draw attention to it only in that I just want to give voice to the fact that a lot of people don't realize it can happen at the drop of a hat without planning, that these things come up. And the stresses, the financial stresses, are such a big piece of just being able to maintain yourself with a sense of just somewhat sense of safety around just being able to be present. Like, it's such an additional stress when you're worried, you're also worried about the financials. And because I think people can imagine, nobody can understand what your experience has been like. But to layer on a financial stress on top of that, it's big. It's just really big.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I think we had at least $10,000 in the bank at the time of his birth. Like, I felt like we were good. We were pretty stable. But that money just went poof.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think too that we were, like, looking back on it, we were physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted in a physical way.
Exactly.
That exhaustion that comes from grief and guilt and, all those emotions, fear, shame, like whatever.
Why would you say shame? Our environment quietly stresses our bones. Fewer minerals, more sitting, more stress. Yin-care's Core Bono is a professional-grade formula with strontium, minerals, vitamin D3, K1, K2, and more to deeply nourish your skeletal strength. It's a dietary supplement, not a drug, and not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. I trust your body wisdom to choose what's right for you. Find Yin-care's Core Bono in our Womb Wisdom store at yincare.com/shop.
I will say my midwife was wonderful. I'm so grateful for her and everything she spoke to me in those first few days. I remember her saying, this kind of thing happens in the hospital all the time. And just really reassuring me that my decisions and my choices would not have necessarily made a difference in the outcome of Max's life. And that being said, I think that part of me was just so curious about what would have happened if I had planned a hospital birth, if I had been in the hospital for a half an hour and the doctor came right at the perfect time, and maybe I would have ended up with a C-section. And that's not something I wanted, but I also didn't want a baby with special needs, So I think I carried some guilt and shame about like how things happened for a long time. And it was hard because I didn't feel like I could express that.
Yeah.
So I held it. So I'm sure that was causing me physical exhaustion.
Exactly.
That was separating me from really truly bonding with my child. I felt like I did bond with him, but it was only to a certain degree. And because there was this thing in the way that was kind of like just putting a little distance there. And so
it's such a normal thing. Obviously, your birth was particularly traumatic and the outcomes. However, that sense of shame in a birth experience is so normal for women, regardless. I don't know if you've picked up on that in other women, but even when they go to a hospital birth, regardless, there can just be one thing that they feel a regret over that the hospital staff did or didn't do, or they did or didn't do, and it just eats away inside of them. So there is so much that happens around birth in general that can be considered, whether it's a minor trauma or a major trauma that inflicts that sense of shame. So I just want to just put it there for other women listening, like to acknowledge that your shame and your trauma is not insignificant, that this may be a presence for other women that are feeling them as you're sharing them too. The other women are going to resonate with that.
Yeah. And I definitely felt that. I had a friend in that prenatal yoga class who had ended up with preeclampsia and needed to have a hospital birth when she had planned a home birth. And she felt like it was very traumatic. And because she was friends with me and had seen my traumatic situation, she felt like her trauma was less, and like she couldn't really view it as traumatic,
right?
Because she was comparing it to mine. And I just want to voice that too, that like just because my birth was more traumatic, or just because my baby had a less than desirable outcome through that trauma, does not mean that any other woman's traumatic birth was less traumatic for them.
Thank you. So that's such a huge gift that you offer to women right there. Truly.
Yeah. And I really felt that for my friend too, that like I wanted her to heal from her birth experience. I didn't want her to feel that she couldn't talk about it to me or express it because mine was worse in some way. And
I know. It's so we want to be there for each other as women so much. And she sounds like a really good friend if she was really honoring your experience too at the same time.
Yeah. She probably was in her own way.
Yeah. Okay. So you get to bring him home and you're round the clock swapping times to care for him. And this goes on for a while. And then there's another shift in the family dynamic, right? Being that I think you get pregnant again, right? At a certain point, is there stuff that happens in between then, or how old was Maxwell when you got pregnant?
When I got
For
pregnant.
a long time.
So I think the next significant change was when I sorry, I just remembered something that I wanted to share about.
Go back, share.
So going back to about the shame and the guilt. So I really was not in a place where I could acknowledge that to myself until a couple years down the line. When I was a CNA at this hospital, I was invited to take a healing touch class. And I had been told about healing touch from my midwife, and she really recommended it for me and for my son to kind of help with his medical issues. And so I went to this class so that I could learn to do this for him. I was really doing this for him. And I had, obviously, when you're learning these different modalities, you're practicing on different people in the class. And so when I was laying on the table, like receiving this treatment, I just had a really profound experience where something in me kind of signaled that this was related to the birth, but it wasn't like words or specific feeling. It was probably just intuitive.
Mhm.
And then I sat up after that treatment and I just sobbed. Like I sobbed harder than I believe I've ever sobbed in my life, at least up to that point, maybe since. And I was in this room full of virtual strangers, not a place where I would generally feel safe to just start crying. And I just feel like that moment was when my body finally was ready to release all this guilt and shame and grief too, because although my child was alive, I I lost the dream of what I expected parenting to be like. All those things that I had kind of hoped and longed for. Even the breastfeeding journey was obviously very different than what I had hoped for. I'm grateful that I was able to pump for as long as I could. And yeah, just really grateful that I was able to give him that. But, it wasn't what I dreamed of or hoped of. And just being able to release all that grief and all that, guilt around maybe feeling like I made the wrong decision or whatever, that was huge for me.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That is such a good thing to draw attention to too, because the body remembers all of the things and it does store all of the information, all of the emotions. Had a similar release. I have this Qigong technique that I do. And at one point when I was doing it, there was one move. This was a number of years ago now, but all of a sudden I had an emotional release and I knew it was in my groin area and it was a release related to my cesarean section. I think at that point in time, it had been like 22 years since it. Now it's been 25 years since it, but it was like a huge emotional release just out of nowhere. And I was in my home by myself, so I could just, let it flow. And there's just different things like there's the body, I feel like unwinds itself from the traumas of our life, even past life remembrances, there are things that come up. I recently had an emotional release in a leg muscle where the visual that I got was that I had been stabbed in my leg. And then it was like, as soon as I acknowledged it, it was able to just start to just dissipate. But there was trauma there. So just all these modalities are so important to take advantage of, healing touch, Qigong, whatever, Reiki, whatever people, I love to just encourage people to just go into their own womb wisdom and their own intuition to feel what is the next, modality. And as we start to, and I'm sure you had this experience with healing touch, like as we need it in our life, those things show up for us. So that probably landed in your space right when you needed it.
Yeah.
So you ended up going to work as a CNA in a hospital while Max was still at home?
Yes.
Wow.
So it was in his first year of life that I think he had 3 specialists at that point, which by the end, I think he had something like 5 or 6. So that was pretty minimal, but it felt huge to me. He had specialists, he had physical therapy, occupational therapy, all these medications and different medical devices and things like that. And I just really felt like this kid needs a nurse, and he needed a nurse to advocate for him. And I, as his parent, needed to understand this language that they were talking to me in. And so I just felt like I really needed to become a nurse so that I could be the best parent for him. So I started that pursuit. Probably, I think I started as a CNA and stuff in that first year of life. I started pursuing that field anyway. Yeah. And then I worked as a CNA through through nursing school, kind of worked part-time while I got through nursing school. And yeah, I just really had this passion to work with kids with special needs and really help advocate for them and help advocate for parents too. Cause I think from the beginning, I have always felt like parents of kids with special needs are just doing so much. And my midwife talked a lot about self-care for parents, just of every parent. And it's so important that you have space for yourself and that you're taking care of yourself so that you can take care of your child. But I think for parents of kids with special needs, it's just so much more challenging for them. They can't just hire a high
No,
schooler to babysit. They can't
no.
just take a kid to daycare. They need to find specialized supports to help care for their kid. And as much as I love the different states who offer payment for parents who take care of their kids, that it's great for a parent to be able to, yeah, provide for their child in that way, provide financially and care for them physically at the same time. But I just, I, there's this part of me that just knows that parent needs a break too. And I don't know if that's always happening in those situations where they are the primary caregiver, they're getting paid to do it. And so they don't leave to go to work, which that's another thing. Like that's not a break either,
Right.
um, but
Well, I've
yeah.
also it's so interesting to me that life is so interesting, right? I was led to read this book that I am probably 3/4 of the way through that is very relevant to our conversation, which is, oh gosh, called Getting to Heaven. Oh my gosh, I'll have to reference it in the show notes for everybody. And it's about this mother with an autistic child and her journey. But she had 5 kids and was in a terrible marriage. And I mean, the whole thing is like a complete nightmare. And yet it's obviously the story is something like getting to heaven. Like there's a heaven that's reached, so there's an inspirational point in this story of her journey in her life and her reckoning with God and all of it. But suffice it to say that she shares a piece of this related to the financial assistance that she's constantly having to reapply for on behalf of her child, where she ends up not only are they denying it, but because she's had a job at certain points, they ask her to pay back money that she had. So now she's like in debt to the government because she attempted to try to reapply. I mean, it's just like, you can't make this baloney up, so yes, in a perfect world, it's nice that like people can access financial assistance, but it doesn't even always work out well.
Yeah.
So it's really rough. Like it's really important that and so let's speak a little bit to this in that a big piece of this that I am getting from this book and we haven't touched on is what's everybody else on the outside looking in on you and your life. Are you able to connect with people still? Are people pushing you away? Like, is this because clearly, like you were saying, you had a friend who had a baby at the same time or roughly the same time in the prenatal yoga? That's rough because people don't know how to interact with someone when things turn out less than desirable situation, right? What's that like for you?
Yeah. I felt like that group,
Mhm.
that we were all in yoga together, they were really supportive at first, and not that they weren't supportive later on.
Mhm.
Um, but just the more their children developed and my child didn't,
Mhm.
it was like each missed milestone was like heart-wrenching for me.
Yeah.
And so it was really hard for me to be around these babies who were starting to crawl or, whatever it was. And just, yeah,
Oh,
I
God.
felt where I was. And I will say it took me a long time, but I came around. Like, I do believe that in his life, and probably pretty early on, probably within the first year or two, I started to be able to see him and appreciate him for his uniqueness and to not compare, to not feel like I needed to compare him
Mm-hmm.
to other kids and other babies. I remember at first that being really challenging for me, just because I really wanted him to, yes, he had this challenging start to life, but there was a part of me that still believed that he could progress and he could, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
learn to do things like any other kid. And so it took a lot of like letting go
Yeah.
of the dream and the expectations and just allowing what is. I will say that beyond that, in his later life, Max was just like all heart energy. So everyone involved in his life like absolutely loved him, even though he had some pretty challenging moments
Mm-hmm.
where like his body got really tense and he just would try and it was like nothing you could do to get him comfortable. He'd
Mm-hmm.
have those really challenging moments. Everybody knew. I mean, it's not like a kid that has explosive behaviors or like violent behaviors where there's this little part of you that thinks like maybe this kid can and just doesn't want to. Like, I feel like with Max, everybody knew that he, or we just had this attitude of he's doing the best he can. And I will say that not all parents of kids with special needs get that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it is a more behavioral
For sure.
issue, I think it's judged more easily as like this is flaw in parenting or this is like something wrong with the kid. And whereas with Max, I don't know, you just knew it wasn't on purpose. Like if he head butted his nurse one day, just like boom,
Uh-huh.
head just straight into her chin. And he had a big black eye. I don't think she actually got hurt, but you knew that he wasn't doing it on purpose. Like,
Right.
I don't know. We all just had this like knowing that he was doing the best he could and his
Right.
muscles were doing what they were doing. And yeah, so
Yeah, I think you're right. In some instances, it's harder to not take it personally, like the movements or the whatever. What was I going to say? There's like just the uncontrollable movements that oftentimes special needs kids can have can to us neurotypical people can feel like they're doing it on purpose or they're doing it to make us angry or they're just making our lives, challenging or whatever. Like it just makes it more difficult. It's not to say that we don't have a heart and come into these spaces of compassion and
yeah,
deep love. Of course, especially if they're our own child, but yes, I know what you mean. But what I'm feeling as you're sharing your story is consciousness in embodied consciousness always wants to express itself. And so I'm just feeling as you're sharing this story that consciousness almost seems to have harnessed itself in his heart. Like, and just maybe he was like almost creating like a transmitter of heart energy while he was here.
yeah,
That's a huge thing to be around
yeah,
continuously. Like an embodied heart energy is very powerful.
yeah. And I don't know, as you're talking, I'm thinking of triggers and like how our children tend to trigger our past pain.
Mm-hmm.
They trigger the things that within us that need to be need to be
Mm-hmm.
healed. And I definitely see that as Maxwell really initiated this healing journey, really. Like, it was not, healing myself was not something I ever considered before he came into our lives. And yeah, that makes perfect sense. That heart energy is just
that unconditional love just radiating. So that's really fascinating to me, because this is one of the pieces that I really want to bring forward to shift our view on short-lived lives on the planet, and really show people that oftentimes we embody to do really powerful work in a short period of time with the families that we drop into. And so you're just kind of getting right into that right there. Like, he came in and initiated this healing journey. So share with us what you feel like he's initiated for you.
Yeah, I think another big part of my healing around this birth and everything was I read the book Spirit Babies, which I highly recommend to everyone. And it really, I wish I had the exact quote that he shares on just the perspective of souls who do choose to be born into like less abled bodies, not fully as we view it.
Maybe we could get the quote later and we can share it in the show notes and everything.
Yeah.
But summarize it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, just the fact that these souls like come into these bodies for a purpose. It's because we've had maybe several lives of these normal, quote unquote, normal lives. And this is an experience that we're choosing to have. And that was really healing for me, just to acknowledge that this is something, this was not, necessarily my fault or like my poor choice. This was like something he chose to be born into. And yeah, looking at that, I've asked myself many times, like, what was Max's life's work? Like, what did Max come to do? And I think there are so many layers of that. But yeah, just for me to have that perspective that he had a purpose, a reason for being born into that body. And he could only do that work in that body, like imperfect that it was. But for me, I don't think I would have been inspired to go to that first healing touch class or continue to receive healing touch for myself if it had not been for him. I wouldn't have gone to that first healing touch class if I didn't think like, oh, I need to learn this so I can use it to help. Right. I was going into it for someone else's good, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But as we learn, the process of becoming a healer so often is about our own healing.
Yeah.
And so for me, that first healing touch class just broke me open. And that's when I learned like the importance of this healing process. I started, and since then, I feel like I've been down a rabbit hole. When I was in nursing school, that's kind of like all I could handle, right? But since then, it's like I've been down this rabbit hole. I've tried all these different things. Yeah, seeking out and just being more conscious in my own life about patterns that I'm repeating and limiting beliefs that I have resurfacing and things like that. I really feel like that first healing touch really started that, like kind of jump started that. And I also just feel like Max was always and still continues to be a spiritual guide through me in that process of doing my own healing and hopefully eventually working with others to support others in their healing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, I am inspired to just share that I really, to the whole audience and to you, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to the Telepathy Tapes podcast. Anyone who's around me all the time is probably sick of hearing me say this, but it's an amazing podcast. It's about autistic children who they start to realize have these telepathic abilities. And it gives a sense of the deeper work that they have arrived here for in these very challenged bodies. So I think you would enjoy it, listening to it. And they do a lot of scientific presentation of testing these things and everything as well. So it's quite fascinating because of that. But just want to add that in there for listeners who are curious about maybe making this idea of, if it's not 100% resonating around spirits coming into bodies for particular work, that podcast details like, yeah, there's definitely work that people are coming in to do. As a reference. We've been going for a long time, and I feel like we barely even touched like on your whole journey. I want to come back because you have such a fascinating other pieces of your story, but I do want to know what happens to Maxwell, like how he lives for 7 years, right?
7.5. Yep.
7.5 years. And it's been how many years since his passing? And when did he pass? What date?
He passed away on December 22nd, teen. So it's been about 7 years.
Okay.
Right.
Wow. And Max had a brother, right? Or a sister? Brother?
Yes. I have, sister and a brother.
A sister and a brother. So that he got to meet both of them too.
He did.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. That's very powerful. And so what happens to Max then as he's getting older? Was it just a natural progression and that as things ended, or what was going on?
Yeah, it was pretty natural. Looking back, I have this perspective. I did not have the perspective at the time, but his sister was born in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So about 2 years before he died. And at that point is when looking back on it, I noticed he was sleepier. He was spending less time in alert, awake states and more time in restful states. And that just kind of was a slow progression till his death. And in the last 6 months of his life, he started struggling a lot with regulating his temperature again, which was a struggle in the beginning in his first probably not 6 months, his first couple months. But that started becoming a bigger challenge, just really cold all the time. I mean, we had a heating pad on him almost constantly.
Wow.
Burned out a heating pad trying to warm. He ended up getting a cold that it took us a while, but we ended up choosing to take him to the hospital for it. And I think it was good. Looking back on it, I was like, there's 15 different things we could have done in the home to treat him just as well as if not better than they did in the hospital. But they didn't give us those options. And I unfortunately wasn't aware that, I didn't have the knowledge to know to ask for those things. So yeah, we opted to take him into the hospital. He was there for a little over a week, and his brother was born while he was in the hospital.
Wow. Oh my gosh, you're kidding me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's a whole different birth story. I was home alone with my almost 2-year-old and going into labor, and it was a very fast birth too.
Did you have a midwife or did you end up free birthing?
I ended up free birthing. I
Oh
mean,
my
my midwife was
God.
on the phone, so
Right.
planned that way, but he was ready to come.
Wow.
But
Oh my gosh. That's an amazing, oh my God. I can't wait to hear that whole story.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, and that was how many weeks before he passed then? Or was it?
And that was about Max passed.
Okay.
So
And
Max
when,
came back from the
yeah.
hospital maybe 3 or 4 days after Maximilian was born. And he was then, we were just going to do antibiotics at home. And yeah, just spending a lot of time in restful states. And I also remember a lot of periods where he was just like his eyes were open, but he was not present. And I don't know, the nurse
Not present in this reality.
oh yeah, not fully embodied.
Exactly.
And the nurse in me can kind of say, oh, maybe he was having absence seizures. But the more spiritual part of me was really seeing that he was engaging with the other side. He was seeing his guides or his angels who were getting him ready for that moment. Um, yeah, those 3 months I was home from work because I was on maternity leave, and just really most of that maternity leave was discussing end of life decisions and things like that. We had a premonition that it was coming. We were seeing the decline, but I don't think any of us really knew how close we were to that moment. And so I went back to work for a couple weeks, and looking back on it, I'm like, why did I need to go back for those 2 weeks? Because if I had known that was going to be it, then I would have wanted to spend those last 2 weeks with him, right? But I think I needed to be there to fully prepare myself for his death. I don't think I mentioned it, but at that time I was working on a transitional care and long-term care unit for kids with special needs. A lot of them were transitioning out of the NICU. We were helping support parents learning how to care for these kids with tracheostomy tubes to help them breathe, with ventilators that they would take home with them, with the gastrostomy tubes that would, the feeding tubes, and some kids that were rehabbing from surgeries and things like that to maybe less severe medical issues. But there was one little baby that was there. Her mother had been a drug user, and so she had a lot of medical issues related to that. And she, in the last 2 weeks of Max's life, she was on hospice care. And yep, I'm still on my call. Sorry, bud. I'll chat with you in a few minutes.
We're almost done.
So yeah, this girl was on hospice care at the time. And yeah, so I was being a hospice nurse for a baby, which was my first experience with that. I had been a nurse for some patients at the end of life, adults, but this has kind of been a first for me. And she passed away, I don't know, maybe 2 days before Max did. One or 2 days before Max did. I can't remember the exact time frame, and that was huge in preparing me for his death, because I walked into the unit at 6:00 for the start of my shift, and she had passed away at around 5:00. And you can tell in the energy, in the mood on the unit, like what had happened. And we all knew, like the moment we walked in, it was like you hit a wall and you're like, you knew that she was gone. And it just hit me so hard. And because I knew that he was close. And my director of nursing was also a palliative care nurse practitioner. And so I was so grateful that I was able to talk to her about it. And she had met with my son a few times to provide some palliative care for him, because we'd always wanted to make sure that we were providing for his comfort more than just doing things to like prolong his life for our own benefit or whatever. So we had palliative care involved very early on. And with some changes and doctors moving away and stuff, we'd kind of landed on this this woman who was director of nursing and not really a practicing palliative care provider. Just because we really wanted to have someone who had that expertise to talk things through. So she had met Max previously and we discussed some palliative care stuff there. So she was kind of aware of his situation. And so to be able to talk to her as not only my kind of boss, as to help me like process this loss that we'd had on our unit. I mean, it was a very like tight knit unit that we were all very close to all the children, just kind of like second parents to all these kids. So she was there to not only support me through this death, but then she also was aware of what was going on with my son. So she could really meet me right where I needed to be met. And yeah, so we had 2 young kids. We had a newborn and an almost 2-year-old. And we were really struggling to provide Maxwell with the care that he needed at this time of life. And the waiting list for like home care nurses was like 2 years long. And yeah, I remember just kind of discussing with her these struggles of like needing more support, but not really knowing how to get it. And she brought up hospice. And because I had felt like this death was far out, I didn't have any idea how close it was. I hadn't considered hospice. And she said, it's for 6 months is the closest you need to be. And even if he lives beyond 6 months, then you just reevaluate and you can
Right, exactly.
That wasn't always true. Back in the day, you had to pay for hospice care. And then after the death, they would like Medicaid or Medicare would pay for the past 6 months.
Right.
So families had to kind of provide that up front. So it's not the case anymore that hospice care can be paid for through insurance.
I think can't you get palliative care though? You can also opt for that and then switch over to hospice or hospice and back to palliative care. Like there's ways to work between those two depending on what's happening.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure. So hospice would have been maybe not as much support as like an in-home nurse for 8 hours caring for your child, but it would have at least been someone to come in and provide some care, a little bit of respite for a short period, since we had our other kiddos to think about and provide and care for too. And so that was just a really impactful conversation for me to have. And I then took that home to my partner, my husband, and who had 2 grandparents, 2, maybe 3 grandparents at that point had been through hospice care. So, and he had pretty good experiences with hospice with them. So yeah, just being able to take that to him. And we both kind of said like, oh yeah, this is a great idea. This is what we're going to do. And that was a Friday. And I think it was like, okay, we'll do that on Monday kind of thing. And then, yeah, we had some family gatherings. It was about Christmas time. So we were getting together with family that weekend. And yeah, it was like, that's all Max needed. All he needed was for us to be ready, for us to like just bring up that hospice conversation. All he needed was to hear that we were ready to let him go. And he passed away the next day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, Christine. Oh, it's so touching and so sad, but it's so beautiful at the same time, like so like incredibly perfectly orchestrated. Whew. Did he pass during the day or the night?
He passed during the day. I was probably breastfeeding a newborn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just sitting with him. You know, I had the baby. He was, I think, was on the floor or something. And he started doing this in nursing. We call it guppy breathing, but it's kind of where I don't know if you want to show this or not, but it's kind of where they're like,
Right.
kind of,
Yeah.
just kind of, I don't know, like reach out for that breath. And so he started doing this breath that I had been taught was kind of a signal of the end of life.
Right. Exactly.
And I immediately called my husband. He was in the kitchen with my daughter. Like they both came, and he picked Max up and had Max in his lap. I had the baby in my lap. Lily was right there with us. You know, my daughter was right there with us. We were like this little circle. And Max stopped doing that breath when my husband picked him up. And so I thought maybe, okay, he's all right now. It's okay. But then it was just a few minutes later when he took his last breath. And I in nursing, we're taught like, oh, we listen for the heartbeat and that's how we determine time of death. And, when we don't hear the heartbeat anymore, but that was like completely unnecessary. Like I knew the moment his spirit left, I knew he was gone. I knew when he was gone. And
wow. Oh my gosh. What a beautiful having the family in a circle with him. And I can't imagine what that was like, but in a memory, at least that probably feels really powerful for you, I would think.
yeah. And we all immediately started crying in that moment when he was gone. We all started crying. I was crying. My husband was crying. The baby was crying. Like we were all sobbing. That wailing.
Of course. What a journey you guys all took,
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, we're going to have to do a part 2 where we get to hear, because I do want to pick up from here. I want to hear, and I think everybody, there's some curiosities, around what happens next. How all the different things, like there's so many things that unfold in your life. How has his life touched your life and continued to touch it in many ways? But, I'd like to spend more quality time hearing about how you honored him, without rushing it. I don't want to feel like we're rushing, and I want this to be digestible for everybody since we've been talking for a while. So we'll sit on this piece of it, and then there's more on your journey. I think it's really powerful. And also the fact that it's so much, all of these little pieces that you just barely mentioned almost at the end, going into working with special needs kids and the hospice and how they're coloring the next stages of your career life as well, that are really big. And of course, like having gone through a divorce with all of this, that's always a big one. And I think is important for other women to hear. And I haven't really covered that. That was like a big piece of what I used to talk about when the podcast used to be just the Mother Rising podcast. And I was doing divorce wellness coaching at that point in time. So that would be really, really good if we could chat on all of that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Christine, for sharing your story with us today. And thank you so much to Maxwell for honoring us and his spirit being present for this beautiful conversation about his life, his very short and powerful life. And we're really looking forward to having you back so we can hear the rest of your story, Christine.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Take a deep breath. Wow. And just let that settle into your body. What a stunning testament to the sheer power of a short-lived life on this planet. Christine's willingness to look directly at the trauma, the systemic pressures, and the deep somatic layers of grief is exactly how we dismantle the programming that keeps us separated from our own womb wisdom. Max didn't just pass through this reality. He orchestrated a profound awakening for his entire family, showing us that consciousness always finds a way to express itself, even through the most challenged bodies. If you want to read more of Christine's beautiful insights or explore the resources mentioned in today's episode, head over to the show notes or the link in the description or visit us at Yin-care.com. If the story touched your spirit, please take a moment and like and subscribe, turn on notifications on YouTube and Rumble, and leave us a review or comment over at Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Share this episode with another mother who is quietly carrying her own unspoken birth story. We are still riding the potent, courageous waves of the year of the fire horse. So remember to stay rooted in the Yin-care herd. Trust your deep inner knowing and rise wild and free. I'm Margaret Jacobson, the Mother Rising. Thank you so much for walking this path of health creation with me. Until next time, honor yourself, celebrate your strength, and empower your transformation with your Yin-care. When our sensitive tissues are off, everything is off. That's one of the many reasons I absolutely love Yin-care's Herbal Wash. This incredible Taoist formula gently nudges the vaginal microbiome back into balance. Not to mention, it feels amazing. So get your hands on some Yin-care's Herbal Wash today. That's YINCARE.com. Restore, rejuvenate, and refresh with Yin-care.